The majority of the questions that we received this past week had to do with the subject of relationships. I got a lot of questions regarding twin flames and how relationships really should look for those of us that are into this new shift that we're into. What are relationships? To understand relationships, we have to understand that without a comparative experience, you couldn't perceive, you couldn't focus, and you couldn't come to understanding about anything in your life, about anything in general. So relationships are creating what we call existence, and they create the conditions necessary for expansion. I've talked a lot about the fact that your external reality becomes the reflection of any of your internal vibrations. You are the center of your universe. Your universe that you live in is just a reflection of the dominant vibrations within you. That being said, your relationships are the loudest reflection of your own vibration. We could call them the giant mirror. So they are the reflection of all the good and all the bad parts of you, which is why your relationships, as you've probably noticed, are a mix of vibrations. Some things good and some things not so good. Everything that is unhealed about you is going to come to the surface in your relationships. They will reflect themselves through the actions and the personalities of the people who you attract into your life. So the big question on everybody's mind nowadays seems to be, is marriage a good thing to do, or is it something which is fairly outdated? Marriage has value. The reason is this. Like I said before, your relationships, especially those closest to you, which is there anything more close than a partner in crime in life, they become the dominant vibrations which you hold. You can't even attract a partner into your experience that doesn't match your dominant vibrations. And so a marriage partner will become the reflection of everything that is unhealed about you. So when you watch somebody that's standing at the front of the aisle that's about to commit themselves to someone for life, what they're really committing to is letting everything that's unhealed about them come to the surface and heal those things in order to make the relationship continue. Because what I watch quite often, especially nowadays when divorce is very rampant, is your partner does exactly what all things do. They become the reflection. They become the reflection of both good things and bad things about you. And when that reflection comes up, a lot of times you don't like what you see. And so I watch a lot of people who are ending relationships just based on not liking the reflection. Instead of seeing, maybe my partner's behaving in that way, what is it in me that's making myself a match to that condition, and how can I change that thing? Your marriage partner can be the most dominant thing causing you the excuse to heal all that is unhealed about you. By even saying, I'm going to promise myself to you, that's the same thing as saying, in order for us to stay married, that means that I have to correct all of these things that are uncorrected about me, where I'm out of alignment. Otherwise, our relationship conditions are going to be incredibly uncomfortable. So in that way, marriage can be the same as promising yourself to the shortcut to expansion. The same way that we could talk about that, though, we could talk about these New Age relationships, which also have value, which is that love really is not restricted to one person or one gender, that love really should flow freely, which is true, because everything that is in existence is an extension of you. Meaning that if you promise yourself to just one person, you are promising to express yourself only to one aspect of you, which seems odd if you are everything that you come up against. But I watch quite a bit when these New Age relationships become the excuse you're using to escape from what is dark about you. When I'm talking about dark, I don't mean that there's this dark side and this light side. When we're talking about shadow sides or dark sides, what we're talking about is low vibrational densities that are present within your being. The New Age relationships can be an escape that people use from really having to commit yourself to changing. The issue is, if you haven't come up against an excuse to have to change those primary discordant vibrations, then you keep coming up against new people who are really just same face, different name, same actions, different person, type of situations where you keep running and you keep encountering it, you keep running and you keep encountering it, whereas if you were going to commit yourself to staying with this one situation long enough to improve the vibration within you, one of two things would happen. Either A, you change that vibration about you and you're no longer a match to that person, and so they fade, not with effort and not with struggle, they just fade very smoothly out of your life. Or else, when you change your vibration, you're no longer a match to that behavior in the other person. And so immediately that person's behavior will no longer be a part of your experience. You can see this quite often when people improve their vibration or expectation or positive focus about another human being. Then let's say that you are in a really, really good mood and your partner's in a really, really bad mood and they're about to come home from work. If your expectation is that you have this high positive focus and you have a high positive focus about them, you're not projecting the fact that you expect them to walk through the door angry. If they're in that modality and you're in this modality that are not a vibrational match to each other, then their car will potentially break down before they make it to the house. Because you cannot share the space with something that's not a vibrational match to you. And so relationships are an incredibly valuable teacher, because when you are experiencing negative behavior in another person, you can stop and say, what is it in me that is reflecting through this experience? I want to give you a scenario which can demonstrate what I mean by your partner becomes the reflection. Who you attract as a partner is a reflection of your dominant vibrations. Let's say you're a woman who is in a very abusive relationship. You keep coming up against this person who is not only controlling the life that you lead, but they're also making you feel terrible about yourself. If you try to look for the counterpart, which is calling this type of a person into your experience, you will most likely find a dominant vibration of, I am unworthy, I am not good enough, I hate myself. That type of a vibration, which was present before you ever met with this particular partner, is the exact condition which attracted them into your life. That's what's making you a match to it. So the more that you work on self-love and the more you work on developing self-worth, the less you can be a match to this physical reflection, which is the relationship that you're in currently. It's at this point that we should talk about self-love. There's a lot of talk about self-love versus selfishness. Self-love is the highest vibrational thing in this universe. When you're watching somebody who's in an aspect of selfishness, they're actually focused on the lack. They're focused on the lack of what they have, and so they have this hoarding type behavior where they feel the need to keep taking from others and taking from others so as to fill up this tank which is always empty. And they're hoarding everything that they have. That type of a behavior is what you call selfishness. It's the opposite of self-love. So the narcissism you're looking at with self-love and calling self-love is not actually self-love. Self-love is taking the time to recognize that the only way that you can attract any kind of external experience which is positive to you is by fulfilling your own needs. It's by showing yourself the kind of love that you would hope others to show you. And in doing so, you will see the reflection of it. That is how to have this relationship that you want so intensely. The relationship all of us want, really, which is this reflection of love and the reflection of total acceptance. The way that you get to that point is by creating that vibration within you. Earlier, I have talked about the fact that vibrations work a lot like a radio dial. So to receive a channel that's being broadcast at a specific frequency, you need to first tune your dial to that frequency to receive that channel. So how do you receive love? You turn your dial to love, which looks like self-love. So why do relationships go badly? A lot of you might say, I get into a relationship and I'm in it for a year and I totally love this person. In fact, I think they're perfect. But after a year, I start hating them. We fall out of love. I just don't have those intense feelings towards somebody. We've talked before about how feelings are the exact reflection of the thoughts that you've been thinking. So what happens is, in the very beginning when you meet somebody in a romantic sense, this very strong attraction sort of causes this chemical cascade throughout your body. We could call them sex chemicals or bonding chemicals. And those chemicals force positive focus. They're really the excuse that is causing you to, without really intentionally doing it, focus only positively on the object of your attention. So when we're talking about falling out of love, what we're talking about is this rush of sexual chemicals starts to dissipate. And what will happen is that puts the power back in your personal hands in terms of positively focusing or not. So instead of your body really taking over and forcing your brain to positively focus, now it's back in your hands to consciously focus positively, but most of us don't. Instead, what most of us do is we focus by default, meaning we pay attention to what is, most often what it is that's bothering us, and then that becomes our focus. And when that becomes our focus, it strengthens the vibration, and then we see more proof to that same focus. So now we're on a negative snowball, where the positive focus wanes, and as you're focusing negatively, those very strong chemicals of passion and of enjoyment of this other person start to wane, and then we think something's gone wrong. In this society today, it's a bit preposterous what we expect of people. It is a natural thing for those of us who come into this physical dimension to know how to love, to know all the languages of love, and we get trained and untrained in terms of how it's appropriate and inappropriate to show love to another person. So we understand who teaches us how to ride a bicycle or who teaches us how to do arithmetic, but we're expected as people in this society to just come into being and immediately know, despite what we've been cultured with, how to love somebody else. At this point, I would like to talk about something which I have found incredibly transformative to have encountered. There is a man named Gary Chapman who, as a therapist for couples for years and years, became incredibly fascinated with the ways that humans express love to each other. Working as a relationship counselor, he was seeing couples coming in whose relationships were ending, and he wanted to figure out what is the variable here. And what he discovered is that among all humans on Earth, that really isn't restricted to any culture. This is a worldwide thing. Humans in general, regardless of where you've been raised on this earth, have 5 love languages. And of these 5 love languages, everybody has a primary love language. And if that primary love language isn't met, then the person is unhappy in the relationship that they're in. Ideally, you would be able to speak and receive all 5 love languages fluently. But so let's take a place like Russia, for example. For many years in Russia, it was considered vulgar to smile publicly, kind of the same way that we would experience public display of affection here in America, where if somebody is really macking on each other, it's kind of this social put-off. So it was a social faux pas to express yourself through smiling or any kind of physical affection in that country. So if you come into that country as a small child whose love language is physical affection, you were taught very quickly that that was not an appropriate love language to express. And not only that, your own love language wouldn't be met, and so you are likely to grow up a very unhappy person in that particular society. In America, we were raised, most of us, with a Christian mindset. And in a Christian mindset, the idea of humility sort of makes an enemy of material gifts. And if your love language is gifts, then, and you grow up in America, it is seen as a materialistic thing. And so many people who grew up in America with a gifts love language not only didn't get their love language met, but learned that that was an inappropriate way to express love. And this cultural thing which I'm speaking of also infiltrates families. So in some families, it's appropriate to express your love this way and inappropriate to express your love in these other ways. You'll see when a child is growing up very quickly what their primary love language is. It'll be the way that they try to express love to their parents. So the little kid who maybe brings a frog in for their mother to see is really expressing a gift love language. Now if the mother screams and tells him to take it outside, that is a subconscious message to this child then that gifts is not an appropriate way to show love. So the 5 love languages are physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and service. For any of you that are interested in going and looking at these 5 languages of love in depth, I would highly suggest it, because it suggests that in order to have a really good relationship, aside from working on yourself in the way that I've just talked about, you can do your relationship a world of good to learn your partner's primary love language, to learn all the love languages really. And what you find is that even your worst enemies are trying to express love to you, only in the way that they understand. It may not be the way that you receive it, but it's the way that they understand how to express love. When I first went through this teaching, I felt like a complete love idiot. It was pretty obvious to me that the person I was living with at the time had a service love language, which is not my love language at all. So he would stand up and do the dishes, and to me I was like, great, the dishes have to be done, but to him that was his expression of love. So he was projecting love, and it was missing the mark over and over again, and the relationship was unraveling because I wasn't interpreting his love language, and he was not speaking mine. Your relationships will be the sum total of your emotional beliefs and decisions about love and about others. So it would behoove everybody watching this tape to go through what their real beliefs are about other people and what their real beliefs are about love, and to find out whether they are beneficial or detrimental. Because your reality is the projection of all of your beliefs. So why not only choose beliefs that are beneficial? At this point, the last thing I want to address is the idea of twin flames. The idea of a twin flame is that you have a counterpoint, a soul counterpoint, which is that before you came down here you split into two aspects, a male and female aspect per se. And that you're looking for completion, and once you find this twin flame, you will experience that completion of being united as a totality of you. I know that this is an idea which the spiritual community quite enjoys, because all of us know how good it feels to meet somebody whose soul envelops you and who you feel such a common understanding with. Everybody hopes for that kind of a sensation. But the idea of a twin flame is quite odd when you understand that you are everything. You are the tree, you are the rock, you are this person, you are that person, you are your worst enemy. So to choose to focus your love and say I will be whole once one tiny aspect of me is reunited with me in the physical is a bit odd. When you have that experience of a soul recognition, what we would call a soul group or a soul mate, or even a twin flame, is that when Source divided into its separate streams, so let's say we're going to do this simile. Let's say that Source is the ocean. Source has separated itself into waves within itself. So a wave within an ocean could be considered as your higher self. The soul, which is eternal, the eternal part of you which keeps flowing to and from life, is a wave within the ocean. Is it ocean? Yes. Is it wave? Yes. Is the wave the ocean? Yes, it's ultimately the ocean. So you and your physical bodies are a wave within the ocean. So when you meet this other person who strikes such a soul connection chord with you, what's occurring is you are meeting a person who ultimately, when you die, you will become the same wave. So you're one wave within the ocean that has split off into two waves. So obviously there would be a more similar vibration between you, which is why you feel such intense resonance when you step into the room with them. That being said, there is no one who can complete you but you. If you were going to transition completely into this state where you expressed self-love to yourself, there would be nothing to fill. There would be no void. There would be no desire even to experience more by being with someone other than you. You would not seek completeness through any other person. And so, this is really the best way to go about it. Let's say you're one of those people who wants to experience the idea of being with a mate in life who is like a twin flame, what we're talking about in terms of twin flame. If you would like to have that in your life, then the best way to get there is to fill yourself up with this vibration of self-love. Learn it and live it to the point where you can attract somebody that's vibrating on that level. That means the minute you step into the room with them, it's going to be like you are meeting the complete magnification of that love which you've been sending yourself. And that is how to attract this thing which we are calling a twin flame. But it's my opinion personally that ultimately your goal is to love every aspect of yourself, not just this one other person which is the closest break-off of your soul group. it would be to not only learn how to love yourself, but to love your enemy, which you won't have anymore if you love yourself, by the way. Love your enemy. Love your friends. Love everything that is. Learn how to project that emotion towards everything that is, and realize that it is all you reflected. There is nobody who can complete you but you. That can be a sort of depressing thing to hear, but that's not the same thing as condemning relationships. They're totally fabulous. If you would like to find a soulmate, there's nothing wrong with finding a soulmate. But the way to get there to the soulmate you want to experience is by first creating a circumstance where you have no need from them, and no need for them in your life. So filling yourself up to the extent where you can say, I really do love me, and it doesn't matter who I encounter and who I'm with and who I'm not with. I'm whole and I don't lack anything, regardless of who is or isn't in my experience. And that is the minute that you're going to meet that person. So I hope you liked my demonstration on relationships. If you have more questions about it, obviously you can write me at asktealtoday@gmail.com.